I never believed in soulmates until I met her. Her name was Claire. And when I say she changed everything, I don't say it lightly. I mean it in the kind of way that makes your chest tighten when you hear her name. The kind of way where everything that came before her feels like silence. We met at a bookstore. I was flipping through a worn copy of Murakami. She walked past, stopped, turned back, and said, "That one breaks you quietly." I looked up and saw her eyes first. Calm, observant. Like she already knew me. That was 4 years ago. Since then, we'd done everything together. Shared apartments, Sunday routines, family holidays. The small language couples develop that only they understand. She had this habit of tapping my knee twice when she was nervous. I used to find it endearing. Now I flinch when I remember it. Claire wasn't loud, but she took up space. Not in an overbearing way, but in the way oxygen does. She filled rooms, conversations, my thoughts. Loving her was like stepping into warm water. I didn't realize how deep I was until I was drowning. I proposed on our 3rd anniversary. She said yes, without hesitation. And for a while, everything was perfect. Or maybe I just believed it was. Looking back, there were signs. Small things, subtle shifts, missed calls, changed passwords. Nights where she said she was too tired, but stared at the ceiling instead of sleeping. But I was in love. And love, as I've learned, is a great blinder. One afternoon, Claire left for a week-long art retreat. She was a painter, and those getaways were her recharge. I missed her terribly the moment the door closed. On the second night, I couldn't sleep. I got up to make tea and noticed she'd left her sketchbook behind. It was under a stack of clothes in the bedroom. Next to it was a diary. Claire wasn't the type to journal often. I'd seen her jot down thoughts now and then. But this one was different. Leather-bound, heavy, like it held weight. I shouldn't have opened it. I know that. But I did. And everything I believed about us, everything I trusted, began to unravel. The first few pages of the diary were innocent. Thoughts about art, notes on colors, fragments of poetry. I almost closed it, ashamed of myself for even looking. But something kept me turning pages, something uneasy. About 10 pages in, I saw my name, and then I saw someone else's. Mark. It was written like a whisper, like something she hadn't intended anyone to ever read. Mark was a gallery owner. She'd met him at a showing the year before. I remembered the night clearly. She came home glowing, rambling about a brilliant eye for contrast, and how refreshing it was to meet someone who really saw her work. I didn't think much of it then. But now, reading the way she wrote about him, it was like watching a storm build from a cloud I had ignored. She wrote about how he listened to her, how he understood the art behind the silence, how he made her feel new. At first it was admiration, then flirtation, then confession. She'd kissed him, and it didn't stop there. The entries were scattered, not daily, but emotionally charged, detailed. She wrote about the guilt, about the thrill, about the way she'd lie in bed next to me and imagine it was him. That line did something to me. I read it 3 times. My mouth went dry. My vision blurred. I closed the book and just sat there. I don't remember how long. Time lost meaning. All I could think was, how long had I been living in a life I didn't fully own? That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I just sat on the couch with that diary on my lap, like a ticking bomb made of paper and ink. And I didn't know what to do with it. When Claire came back from the retreat, she was glowing. She hugged me like nothing had changed, kissed me slowly, told me she missed me. I stood there, arms half raised, wondering how to fake normalcy, when everything inside me had changed shape. I didn't mention the diary. Not that day. Not the next. Instead, I studied her. The way she moved. The pauses in her speech. The new art pieces she painted. Were they inspired by guilt? By him? I tried to act the same. To speak the same. But my smile cracked at the edges. My laughter had splinters. I became an actor in my own life, reading from a script I no longer believed. I thought about confronting her. Every day. I even rehearsed the words. But I wanted to know more first. I wasn't ready to blow everything up without being certain. Maybe it had ended. Maybe it meant nothing. So I did something I'm not proud of. I started reading the diary again. At night. When she was asleep. It became an addiction. Every entry a punch to the gut, but I couldn't stop. There was more. More confessions. More nights. More excuses. She told me to cover her absences. She even wrote about lying to my mother. To my face. The last entry was dated 3 days before the retreat. It ended with, "I think I love him, but I don't know how to let go of the life I've built." I read that sentence until the words blurred. That was when I knew. She hadn't just cheated. She had rewritten our love story with someone else holding the pen. I decided to confront her on a Sunday. We had just finished breakfast. She was cleaning up, humming a song I used to love. Now it felt like a knife against my nerves. I asked her to sit down. She smiled. "What's up?" And I asked, "Do you love me?" She blinked. "Of course I do." So I said, "Then tell me who Mark is." Her face changed. Not suddenly, but like a slow leak in a tire. Air hissing out, collapsing the shape. She didn't speak. Her fingers curled around the edge of the chair. And I knew. I didn't need more, but I wanted her to say it. I needed to hear it. When she finally did, her voice cracked. She tried to explain. Said it just happened. That it wasn't planned. That she was confused. All the usual phrases people throw like sandbags at a collapsing dam. I asked her how many times. She didn't answer. I asked her if she loved him. She said, "I don't know." That's when something inside me broke. Not from anger, but from the sheer exhaustion of loving someone who didn't know what to do with it. I told her to pack a bag. She cried. Tried to hold me. I didn't move. I stared past her at a painting she did last year. One I used to admire. Now, it looked like a lie in oil and canvas. She left an hour later. She didn't fight it. And just like that, the woman I thought was my future became a stranger holding a suitcase. The days after she left were silent, not just in sound, but in feeling. The apartment felt too clean. Her absence hung in the air like smoke after a fire. I kept finding pieces of her everywhere. A hair tie on the bathroom sink, a scribbled note in a cookbook, and the scent of her perfume on the scarf she forgot in the closet. I didn't throw anything away, not at first. I wasn't ready to let go. Instead, I drifted through routines, work, eat, sleep, or try to. Some nights I'd wake up thinking she was still next to me. Other nights I'd reach for my phone, halfway through texting her before remembering I had nothing left to say. People asked what happened. I lied. Said we grew apart. They nodded, as people do when they sense a story too heavy for small talk. The truth was heavier than I could carry out loud. I started writing, not for her, not even for me, really. Just to get it out. To take all the poison and pour it somewhere that wasn't my chest. One night, I wrote down everything she said when I confronted her, word for word. Then I burned the paper. It felt small, but it felt like something. I began to reclaim space, donated her clothes, took down the paintings, deleted the photos from my phone. But not from the cloud. Not yet. Some wounds don't want to be erased, only understood. I wasn't okay, but I was no longer pretending. A few months later, I saw her again. I was at a coffee shop downtown, reading alone. She walked in like a ghost wearing a coat. Same eyes, same posture, but thinner, tired, like life had weighed on her more heavily since we'd parted. She didn't notice me at first. I debated staying. I debated leaving. In the end, I just watched her. She ordered tea, sat near the window, scrolled through her phone with that familiar frown she made when focused. I used to love that frown. Now it just reminded me of who she used to be, and who she no longer was to me. Eventually, she looked up and saw me. Our eyes met. She froze. I nodded slightly. She didn't smile. She walked over, said my name like it tasted strange in her mouth, asked how I was. I said, better. It wasn't a lie. She asked if I hated her. I told her no, and I meant it. Hate is too active, too consuming. What I felt for Claire now was quieter, like a wound that scarred over but never fully vanished. She didn't ask to come back, didn't cry, didn't apologize again. We just stood there, two people who once built a life together, now reduced to a 5-minute conversation in a coffee shop. Before she left, she said, "I'm glad you're okay." I didn't answer. Some things don't need closure. Some people are the lesson. Healing didn't come all at once. It came in fragments, in quiet mornings without tears. In the moment I laughed at a joke and didn't feel guilty for feeling joy. In the decision to redecorate the apartment. Not to forget her, but to reclaim it. I started going on walks again, listening to music without thinking about what she'd say. I began to feel like myself, not the version of me I had curated for her, but someone more grounded, more real. I saw friends I had distanced myself from, ate food I hadn't touched in years because she didn't like it. I even started painting again. Nothing serious, just color and space, movement and release. One evening, I found her last message in my inbox, unread for months. It said, "I'm sorry for everything. I hope you find someone who sees you the way you saw me." I didn't reply. Some words don't need answers. Some endings aren't doors. They're windows, open just enough to let the stale air out. Eventually, I met someone new. Her name was Elise. Not perfect, not magic, just kind, present, curious. We talked for hours, about books, about failure, about how some people come into our lives not to stay, but to show us where we're still broken. With Elise, I didn't have to be anything other than honest. And that, I realized, is the purest kind of love there is. Elise didn't ask for details. Not right away. She could sense the history in my silences and see the weight I sometimes carried in my eyes. But she never pushed. She just made space. For silence. For slowness. For healing. We took things slowly. Dinner dates that ended in long walks. Texts that didn't demand immediate replies. Sleepovers that began with tea and ended with unspoken understanding. With her, I never felt the need to hide. I didn't worry about being too much or not enough. I didn't feel like I was rebuilding. I felt like I was discovering. One night, as we watched the city lights from her balcony, she asked, "Have you ever been in love?" I said yes. Then I said, "But not like this." It wasn't a comparison. It was a shift. A realization that what I thought was love before was really longing, obsession, fear of being alone. What I felt now was steadier, kinder. Claire had been a fire. Elise was sunlight. One burned. The other warmed. And for the first time in years, I didn't flinch when I imagined a future. I didn't brace for betrayal. I simply breathed. That's when I knew I had finally let go. Not of the memory, not of the pain, but of the version of me that had been stuck in the past. and I was ready to begin again.